Summary. We learned a lot in this module. We talked a bit about separating a flow into multiple flows for easier reads of your files and configurations and reusability of those flows. We talked about extracting duplicate code into reusable private flows or subflows. We saw private flows and how they are flows effectively without a message source. Subflows, how they can be executed exactly as if inside of the calling flow. How they are always run synchronously and how they inherit that processing strategy and exception strategy from their parent or calling flow. A flow processing strategy determines how MMUULLEE implements message processing for a given flow. All MMUULLEE flows have an implicit processing strategy which MMUULLEE applies automatically. Endpoints with a request-response exchange pattern are set to synchronously. Endpoints with a one-way exchange pattern are set to queued asynchronous. We learned about flow references and how it lets us have flows directly reference one another without the need of having a transport. We learned about the Java virtual machine transport for intra-JVM communication, allowing us to achieve higher levels of parallelism at certain stages, more specific tuning of areas in our flows architecture, and how to call flows in other applications that are in the same domain. We saw flow variables and how we can persist them throughout flows unless we cross a message boundary like VM or HTTP. In session variable and how they can persist depending on the transport. We saw it persist with VMs and we saw it get lost when crossing the HTTP transport. We got to see separate application functionality and how we can split that into different configuration files. We specifically looked at encapsulating global elements into a single configuration file called global XML. We put files only needed at development time in the source test resources folder. This way, when we generated the package, all those schemas and ancillary documents we didn't need were not included in the application package. We separated functionality into multiple applications to allow managing and monitoring these into separate entities. And we also learned about how to share resources between applications using this notion of a shared domain.